We have Ms. Kiran Bedi right here, who will take us through her quick PowerPoint presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Ms. Kiran Bedi herself. Over to you, ma'am.
Here are the slides you missed. Can I have your attention? If you wish to go through. Where is the slide show changer? Basically, it's building towards a model and becoming a solution within the existing limitations and realities. And it is working on what we have rather than what we don't have. So what did we have? I explained to you. We know the problem. Look at this. It makes sense. इसमें वो है, ये है, वो नहीं है. Pointer नहीं है. This is what we were seeing all the time. This is what was visible on the ground, and it's nothing unique. It is discrimination, and kids aren't all right. Look at this very interesting statement. If we can't provide our young ones health and employment or guarantee their safety and liberty, we could very soon have 706 million angry youth on our hands. That's a likely challenge, friends. We know this. This is the ESSER study. Every time, every year, it's repeated. This is of yesterday. This is of Times of India of yesterday. And it's alarming. It says in India, after completing 4 years of school, 90% of children from poorer households. This is UNESCO study. This is UNESCO study of 11th Education for All. This is EFA Global Monitoring Report on India. This was released today and yesterday. It made news yesterday. This is the story. In India, even after completing 4 years of school, 90% of children from poorer households remain illiterate. So this is another study. It's basically making a point of what are we doing, what the scale of problem we have, and all of us will have to do whatever we can. This is the slum I was talking to you about. This is the slum in which we worked in Delhi, not a couple of years ago, and I'm not surprised this would be happening. This is a scene anywhere in the country. It's nothing unique. It is here where I told you when I used to walk the streets, flies or children outnumbered each other. And it is in this that we started to do. This was 100,000 residents of Yamuna Pushta, right opposite the Red Fort. This is how we changed the scene with working on the streets, in the gullies. This was the gully school I was mentioning. This is a look at the gully schools. We occupied whatever space we had. And it was all free. People donated a teacher. People donated books. We can find donors. We just have to connect power, position, goodwill, credibility, authority with the haves and the have-nots. Some of us can be the bridge. I was like a person in uniform becoming a bridge between the haves and the have-nots, and in the process, my crime came down. But through social development, and this is how Navjyoti got institutionalized. So we started to reach out 5,000 children, but we got demolished. Government did not give us any location. Many of these places were built by many embassies who were supporting us, but we were just thrown out. But we did not give up. It was demolished. But we went back to Bhavana. This is where in the outlying areas where we are. Even we followed them to the road. 15,000 households, highly crime-affected area. And we start to work. This is how it is working. Now, even now, and it's growing, it's vocational skills, it's everything, anything which the community needs, even little children as cadets. They're like beat cadets. That's a computer education. That's music school. This is different, all that a wealthy school, a well-off school, a good school provides. This is what the poorest of our children are getting through this approach. So we gave them all these, literacy, right to education, right to skills. If you see all these, this is it. But these are schools after school program called the remedial school, whatever you may call it. It's after school to cover up and catch up with the weaknesses and shortcoming. Then we decided it's not enough. We can't teach character. We got to build character. So we put in together saying character is not taught but built. So we created them into a Gurukul. So now the 5,000 children have created their own university called Children's University. And we call it the Bal Gurukul. And in this, the departments of all ethics department. So that is where Sanskar came in. And they all meet on their own. We are mentoring them. It's block-wise now. Block-wise to zones, zones to. And it's like a rotary function where you elect your own Gurukul. You elect your own, and a girl and a boy. For 2 years, the second person takes over and children rotate. So we're teaching leadership, social conscientiousness, and responsibility taking. And it's just amazingly working, I can tell you. Any one of you is welcome to watch it and see this as an experiment. Delhi, it's cost at no added financial cost. These are our results. We continue to get evaluated externally. Look at the results. Our dropout rate is negligible. Even this 3% is probably those who had to go back to the village. Otherwise, they just don't drop out. And the average cost per child to me is 800 rupees per month. That's the cost. But we give them the highest quality cost. You just saw this one wonderful lady, Neetu Sharma. She's one of the finest in delivering this kind of a program. And she is heading this program. And there are costs involved, but we meet the cost most reasonably but adequately. Look at this provision of the RTE. This is the provision where the Section 4 makes provision and government is not following this. We need to create an advocacy group to ask them to implement this. If they implement this, then we NGOs and government and others become partners. That means there could be a funding budget for it. And we need not be always dependent on doles from elsewhere. We could have part funding, though of course we won't wait for it. But this is how government should step in to implement Section 4 of the Right to Information, where it says that those who are not at par, they need to be receive special training. And this is special training when they come to school after school. So how does Navjyoti do? It does community coalitions. It does, the government gives us center wherever it is. We tie up with universities, we tie up with technical institutions, we tie up with embassies. So we keep working together. So it's community coalitions, engagement with volunteers. We got lots of volunteers and interns who come to us from nearby management schools. We involve students. We involve the youth. So it's all shiksha, sanskar, and skills. It genuinely seeks to improve outcomes, responding to problems as they exist today. Children can't wait because while they will catch up, they will pick up age if we don't respond today. So I'm saying let's begin with whatever we have today to save our next generation. So it's shiksha, sanskar, and skills. And sanskar was very important to add. Let's do that. We can make gurukuls wherever we are. Gurukul is a very typical, I loved what Mr. Guru Swami, Guru Murthy said. Is he here? Guru is gone? Guru's gone? This is what is needed. We need to know our sanskar. You know, we show them films on Gandhi, Shastriji, Patel, history, Panchtantra. All these are very integral part of the sanskar. They don't know Indian history. They don't know our freedom movement. The schools haven't shown them those films. When we show them, you'd be surprised. Last year, we took an examination. Before and after. We take children to 30th January, 30 January ke liye le jate. We ask them, write a little lecture, write a little note on Mahatma Gandhi. And a few questions to answer. One of the questions was, what was the name of Mahatma Gandhi's wife? Many wrote Indira Gandhi. And do you know what? We kept that paper back. We didn't tell anybody you're right or wrong. We kept the paper back. We took them to 30th January, 30 January mark. Do you know what? Half of them came crying. और कहे हमको वो कागज हमारा वापस दे दो. वापस दे दो. So नहीं, दोबारा लिखो. They rewrote it. Whose fault was it? The fault is of the teacher, who's not teaching them in their formal schools. So they need this kind of informal commitment, informal service by us. Us, the haves. We are the haves. We have to reach out the have-nots in as much ways as possible. So this is what, and skills, of course. once he begins, he goes from shiksha to sanskar and skills. So it's all and. So what is self-education? Is, I firmly believe, the only kind of education there is. Self-education. So we inculcating self-education. See a film, write a note on it. See a film, take a mic and speak. Confidence building with ethics is every child's need today. Confidence building with ethics. And we can do it. So education, therefore, my friends, is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. Unfortunately, some don't even have a pail. And some have it, which is leaking. I think that's the key. We don't have to fill in a pail. Let's give them a pail full of sanskars, skills, and shiksha. I thought this is what I would share with you. Thank you very much.
I think if we're feeling refreshed after such a heavy lunch, we owe it all to her. Another big round of applause to Ms. Bedi and the kind of work that she's been doing. Thank you very much for sharing that work and inspiring us, ma'am. Thank you once again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into the next panel discussion. The topic for this panel discussion will be Private Education Leads to Public Good. May I request the chairperson, Mr. V. Raghunathan, CEO, GMR Varalakshmi Foundation, to please make his way onto the stage. We also have here with us the rest of the panelists that I'd like to introduce to you. Mr. Sunil Galgotia, Chancellor, Galgotias University. Mr. Vijay K. Thadani, CEO, NIIT and founder, NIIT University. Mr. Kausaf Sen Gupta, Associate Professor, NIFT, Chennai. Mr. VPS Arora, Vice Chancellor, Supertech University, and Mr. R. Ravichander, Group President, Business Development South, Yes Bank. A warm round of applause, if you will, ladies and gentlemen, for our group of panelists. I now hand over the proceedings to our chairperson, Mr. V. Raghunathan. Over to you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here in this conclave, held under the leadership of Mr. PrabhuChawla, under the aegis of the New Indian Express, adding significant value to the thinking process of the Indian education. Thank you, sir. You know, I like this topic. Private education leads to public good. It's not, does private education lead to public good? It's an assertion. It's a statement made by the organizers. But I think we need to be very, very clear if we are going to get some value out of this session to understand what do we mean by public good. I think we have to be very clear that there is a public good when there are no rivals, which means one person taking away something does not reduce something for somebody else. That is public good. And secondly, nobody can be prevented from accessing that good. That is called public good. Take, for example, a lighthouse. Everybody is getting their signals from the lighthouse. Nobody loses anything because I am using more of that light, nobody else is denied. Nor can you prevent, once the lighthouse is built, it might have been paid by the taxpayers' money, but nobody can be prevented from using the lighthouse. It's the same thing with defense forces. Whether I am a taxpayer or not, I will benefit from the defense forces. The All India Radio, the Doordarshans, and so forth. Now, all these are actually examples of public good. By the same token, where the private sector comes in is, if I have a beautiful painting in a national museum, it's a public good. But if it is in a private museum, it's actually preventing some people accessing it. So the element of public good reduces a little bit. And I think that is where the debate comes in. Can private enterprise, which by definition involves a little bit of profit making, can it really lead to public good? But the assertion here is that yes, it does. You see, one might say that usually public goods are essentially given by the NGOs and the government sector and rarely by the private sector. But if you look at the MITs of the world who started this open courseware. MIT is a private university. They put the courseware out there in the open domain. Anybody can use it. No one is impoverished because somebody else is using it. Then before you know it, Coursera.com comes on the line. A lot of professors from a lot of private universities, including Nobel laureates, teach on Coursera.com. And here it is, available to everyone. And that is leading to public good from private education, which is, the entire MOOC and MOOC and open courseware that we talk about today. They're all great examples of private education leading to public good. On the other extreme, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, sometimes, even those who are in the business of public education do not realize that they have a role of public good. I'll give you a small example. About a year ago, in some context, I was talking to the board of the IIM Ahmedabad. Chairman and quite a few members of the board were there. And my suggestion was that given that an IIM today costs about 1,000 crore of the taxpayers' money, it makes very little sense merely to teach 500 students. I said, hey, why don't you do one thing? And I should know the system. I've taught there for 20 years in IIM Ahmedabad. I said, you put a camera in the best teacher of the class, because they run 5 sections for every course. I said, you put a camera in the best teacher of a given class, let it go to 2,000 Reliance Web World-like centers, whose coordinators might have been trained at IIM Ahmedabad, and somebody can take only finance courses and become a finance diploma holder, somebody could do marketing courses and become a marketing diploma holder, and so on. I said, that to me would be truly making an IIM system into a public good. And surprisingly, nobody thought it was a great idea, first of all. The second problem was, someone said, but will that not dilute our brand equity? I said, hang on, your logo says Vidya Vinyoga Dvikasaha. Knowledge grows the more you grow it. I would like 2 million of my children to get the same education that IIM Ahmedabad gives, albeit at a slightly different kind of an environment where the coordinators may be trained so that they can give the assignments or do the test and so forth. So this is what I meant by saying there are private players who are contributing enormously today to the public good. There are public players who haven't fully understood the potential of what it really means to let the public education become a true public good. I think this is what broadly the two extremes of the issue. We have some outstanding experts here who have done enormous work in the area of wonderful private education. And in general, one can always say that education certainly empowers people. Education certainly builds skills. It builds confidence, it builds communication skills, it makes economic activity a lot more vibrant. So in that sense, one can say any higher education leads to public good. But if private sector today, for example, I don't know what the percentage exactly is, give or take, between 40 and 60% of the higher education being delivered by the private sector, one can hardly question that there's a lot of public good that is coming out of it. So I think I'm going to pass on the session to the experts here, but I cannot resist the temptation of sharing a small anecdote with you before I do that. With due apologies to the wonderful organizers of this excellent conclave, whenever I see panels like these, and where the time is 1 hour, I'm reminded of a very interesting parable, which is that there's this guy who has 1 meter of cloth, and he goes to a tailor and he says, I want a cap. You must have heard it. The tailor readily agrees, yes, sir, come day after tomorrow and pick up your cap. Then this guy thinks as he comes out of the shop, oh my God, if he agreed so easily, there must have been excess of cloth. So he goes back and says, no, make it 2 caps. The tailor says, yes, sir, 2 caps, day after tomorrow, pick it up. The guy says, 2 caps also, he agrees so easily. Comes back and says 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10 caps. The tailor says, sir, it will be delivered. So day after tomorrow, when the man goes to pick up his caps, the tailor puts them in 10 fingers, 1 cap on each. So I'm sorry, you'll have about 7 minutes ahead, because in all fairness, if 400 people have come here to listen to us, they will also have questions. They want the benefit of your experience and your time. So I will request you to please stick to 7 minutes so that we at least give 15 minutes to all of them. So you will probably get a buzz from me or whatever at the end of 6 minutes, so you can wind it down in the next 1 minute. So with that, over to the real experts. May I request Mr. Sunil Galgotia, please.
Very good afternoon. I couldn't agree more with Mr. Raghunathan when he said there's a huge gap in government universities in optimally using their resources. A small example would be IIT Kanpur. It has 1,000 acres, and it just caters to about 6,000 to 7,000 students. And our university, which is in about 70 acres, has about 12,000 students. So yes, I fully agree with him that private education needs to fill the gap, in addition to the government universities making them more optimum, their infrastructures, and in aiding the private education, in aiding the education. Now, education has evolved tremendously over the last 15 years. I remember when we set up university in 2000, there were very few colleges available for engineering education and even higher education. And there was a huge gap between demand and supply. Around 2000, there were colleges operating out of cowsheds, and you had students lining up for admission over there and even paying donations. Today, after 15 years, the scenario has changed dramatically. Today, there's a situation of excess supply. There's no question of donation. There are institutions where students don't even want to go there. So that I would look at that in a very positive way, because now the students have a choice of quality institutions. So there are how the private education has really helped the public good. There are a few points I would like to elaborate. The biggest would be the geographical skew in higher education. 15 years back, students had to go from one state to another. The education was there in few pockets, like South India. With the entry of private sector, higher education is now almost evenly spread across the country, reducing the need for students to travel from one state to another. More growth is leading to more competition, resulting in declining of fee charged by universities and institutions. There has also been increase in gross enrollment ratio. Now, and more employability. Though the issue of quality remains, as only 30% of those passing out are employable, but this will change with the growing competition and closing of institutions who are not providing quality education. And there is no doubt that private higher education institutions will ultimately provide better quality. Good private universities provide quality education because of disciplined and efficient functioning as compared to certain government institutions where teachers are not much bothered due to total job security and poor infrastructure, primarily due to lengthy decision-making processes. Private higher education offers more inclusive education, reach larger number of students with relevant courses of study. Government universities, institutions cater to a very small percentage of students, with private institutions catering to almost 50% of the students. Private universities can quickly bring about curricular reforms, leading to regular revision and upgrading, fully flexible credit system, and examination reforms at a faster pace. There is better connectivity with industry. Private institutions, due to strong proprietorial urgings, are more competitive and as such more sensitive to the interests of society, of the students and the industry. And private higher education offers more programs of study with job market requires. Vocational education, skill development initiatives are taken up faster by private institutions. Faculty is the single most critical factor responsible for quality in higher education. In government institutions, faculty positions remain permanently vacant, while private sector, this is not the case. Private sector is fast in using technology-assisted participatory teaching learning processes with an emphasis on feedback system and a holistic system where there is inclusion of human values in the subjects, in the course material. Indian universities have the potential of becoming world-class. Students are willing to pay for better quality. And Indian universities they're also criticized for taking donations. Now, donations, I feel, is more of a symptom rather than the disease. The problem lies in the government policies. If you take the case of engineering colleges for that matter, 15 years back, there was a huge supply and demand gap. And because of that, there used to be a lot of donations which used to be charged. 15 years now, that demand has reduced. And so there are colleges who are not only not charging donations, they are giving discounts in the fees. So I think what probably requires is more government-friendly policies with regard to promoting of the private institutions rather than a restrictive regime which prohibits opening of the new education centers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I don't need to summarize what he has said. It's been a very crisp and a very clear presentation. I'll request Mr. Vijay Thandani of NIIT to share his views.
Good afternoon, and first of all, thank you very much to the organizers. It's been a wonderful conference. Normally people compliment organizers on the choice of speakers, but in this case I would also like to say a very, very intelligent and participative audience. And I'm saying this in advance of the brickbats that I may receive. I must paraphrase what I'm going to say with the following, that I'll restrict my comments to higher education, though education is a larger subject. The second thing which I do want to say is that while I will have some comments to make, you may not hear anything because education is a subject which affects all of us, and therefore each one of us is an expert on the subject. The third thing which I would like to say is that I am a beneficiary of the public education. I went to a public school, I went to a public university, and therefore whatever I have learned is what I am able to share with you. So obviously some good did happen. And lastly, but not least, I am right now part of the gang which provides private education. So here is what I want to say. The demarcation between private and public, every time the word education is used, is a very hotly debated topic. And I wonder why. Why couldn't we just talk about education is for public good? Private and public are just methods of funding, methods of proliferation. And while the chairman said it's not a zero-sum game, can we open our eyes to, instead of being a zero-sum game, which means one loses, one wins, can it become a synergistic game? Can 1 + 1 lead to 11? And that's essentially what I am talking about. For me to build my case, I need to go back to where education stands today. So first of all, given the 7 minutes that restriction there is, I will keep my sentences short, but I'll try to make all the points. The environment is changing, and I think all of you are very, very familiar with that. New kinds of jobs are coming up. New kinds of industries are coming up. We found out this morning 55% of our GDP is from services industry. We must recognize the fact that most of the education, especially higher education that we have, is dedicated towards the industrialized society, and it's towards manufacturing, especially the engineering education. And therefore, education itself requires a change. The second thing which I would like to say is that jobs are not only in the newer industries that we recognize, but a recent study said we don't even know the jobs that will exist in 2025, the rate at which they are changing. And obviously, if we have universities which take 5 years and 10 years to change their curriculum, there is no way we are going to be ready for the new paradigms that are coming up, because change is happening faster. The second change which is happening is the learner is changing. In every audience that we discuss, or in every gathering that we discuss about education, we discuss government, we discuss the provider, we discuss the teacher, but the victim of all this deliberation is the poor student. Nobody discusses the poor student. The poor student is changing. Let's realize that we are now dealing with millennials who come with very, very different qualities and very, very different characteristics. They have very specific lifestyles, and I'm sure each one of us talk about the generation gap that we have with our children. And in this case, the millennial generation gap is real. And enough is written on it. I could have talked more, but given the shortage of time, enough to say that we need to consider the learner in paradigm. Enough to say also that while you are preparing for the next day's class, the students have already read it on the Facebook and discussed it. And therefore, next morning when you come, what you are teaching them, frankly, is what they could teach you. So, you should be careful about that when you're planning for education. The third is the role of technology. Enough has been discussed about role of technology and MOOCs and MOOCs, but MOOCs are here to stay. Online learning is here to stay. Role of technology is increasingly becoming faster and more and more pervasive. It has been threatened for last 50 years that technology will change education, and it's happening now. In that paradigm, what is it that needs to be done to education? The whole traditional method of education that we are used to has to change. Again, for shortage of time, I would refer you to a wonderful article written in the Harvard Business Review, 8th January edition, by a Professor Michael Staton. The headline of that says it all. It says the degree is doomed. The degree is doomed. So the education is changing. What's the good news in this? The good news is, while all of us are struggling to find out what are the right solutions, let's also understand the whole world is struggling with trying to find the right solutions. They have the same millennials, they have the same changes in the environment, they have the same impact of technology, and I think the new kind of jobs that are emerging is causing a revolution in education. Closer home. So this was the education scenario worldwide. And the headline is, the education is changing and we all got to change with that. Closer home, we have the GER challenge, the gross enrollment ratio. At 19-20%, for us to believe that we will ever be the third largest economy on the planet, I think is a pipe dream. Is a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. It's amongst the lowest in the world, and I think if we have to even reach the average, we are good 5 to 10 percentages away from there, depending on how you measure it. So the GER challenge basically means, of the 120 million students who complete class 12, only 25 million make it to college. 95 million do not make it to college. If 25 million people are going to college, that leaves a large number to be looked after in future. The second is the funding challenge. As a country, we spend 3 to 4% on our GDP, on education. Somebody mentioned 6 to 10% needs to be spent and is spent by others. If that is the question, where is that money going to come from? Third, you must know that even after spending all this, $7 billion are repatriated every year by Indian families for teaching or educating their children abroad. $7 billion. Interestingly, that's about the same number which the government of India spends on higher education. Okay. The growing middle class has a higher affordability. That is also obvious. And we discussed enough about the teacher challenges. So if we were to take all these facts together, what are the 3 or 4 things that are required to be done? Number one is the way we look at our education. The question is, Mr. PrabhuChawla talked about valuation versus values. So I don't think the issue is about valuation or values. I think the answer is valuation and values. Because without valuation, you will not have enough money to invest in values. And you can invest in values, but on an empty stomach, you can only go that far. The other interesting thing which we have to look at is innovation. Most of the growth that we have seen has come from a production-based economy. If India has to make the further strides that it needs to, it has to create new knowledge. It has to invest in research. For that to happen, one, of course, you need funds for research. Second, you need a frame of mind in the student to pursue research. Very interesting study. A 4-year-old asks 12 questions an hour. By the time he reaches class 12, he asks 1 question a day. And I think by the time he gets into college, he has lost all his ability to ask questions. How will creativity happen if people have forgotten how to ask questions? And do we realize that we systematically beat down the child every time the child asks questions? Now that damage which is done in the first 12 years has to be set right in the next 4 years. And that is what some of the universities are trying to do right now. I have finished my 7 minutes? Okay. I have 1 minute. Okay. So let me come back to what I really wanted to talk about in the end, and which is to say that private and public education are not either-or situation, but an and situation. What private education brings, what public education brings is basic research. What private education brings is applied research. What public education brings is academic linkages. What private education can bring is industry linkages. What public education can bring is excellence. What private education can bring is excellence at scale. What public education can bring is conformance. What private education can bring is innovation and entrepreneurship. What public education can bring long gestation, private education bring time to scale and scale, the speed and scale. So the question is not about private or public. The question is on innovation, excellence, scale, and speed. Both these, all these can only be provided by both of them and not by either one of them. So we said we want to be the third largest economy. We are the second largest population. We are the third largest educational provider. So we shouldn't be discussing about what we should do to follow others. What we should be discussing about is what can we do which others can follow. And truly we have an opportunity, because soon we will become the most populous country in the world. Very soon we will become the largest educational provider in the world, and therefore we have an opportunity to show a direction to the world. So enough of the rhetoric of P and P or P, but let's discuss P plus P. I'm not referring P, because that's a much abused word. I'm discussing P plus P, because with that, we can actually solve the problems that all of us are facing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thadani. I think you have heard two very tall gentlemen from the private educational sector. I think they are about as seasoned a professional as they can ever get in this space. Now we get a different perspective from an academic, Dr. Kausav Sengupta of NIFT, who will probably give it a slightly different flavor, I hope.
Let me tell you an incident in a very tweet pattern, because it's a 7-minute, so the story has to be tweeted. I run an initiative called Inklink, and it teaches children through social media. Why not? If they spend 8 hours in Facebook, why can't we go to Facebook and teach them there? Why we need a school for that? Well, we were organizing a workshop in a very eminent institute in Chennai, where the students are having a very strong suicidal tendency. So the workshop was to teach them caricature. And they are all engineering students. Around 450 of them registered for that. And I was quite scared because 450 is a big number for an individual to teach. So I asked a very blunt question saying that, how many of you know drawing? Only 3 left and all of them gone. So when I asked why not drawing, then they thought that engineering drawing and the drawing what I mentioned is different. Then I asked them, how many of you know A, B, C, D? Everybody said, yes, we know. Then I asked, what is the difference between drawing and A, B, C, D? All are same, right? So that's the problem. The problem here is that we lack clarity of what is education. So I will start with the basic meaning of Vidya. Vidya in Sanskrit means clarity, whereas education, by definition, a Western concept says that process of receiving systematic instruction or gathering knowledge, right? This is exactly the paradox our post-colonial education system is having. Are we talking about gathering knowledge or are we talking about the clarity of the knowledge? Now I'll go to the data which is directly related to that. It says that 17.45% of engineering graduates and 25% of MBA graduates are only employable, last year's data. Now it means there is a large pool of pass-outs from engineering colleges and management colleges who can't be employed in the industry. Now it's not me saying, it's a survey which is conducted nationally. And the reason said that they were not communicating well. Now why do you need an engineering graduate to communicate? They need skills to do. The problem is not the communication as language, the problem is the communication through clarity. They knows what is written in the book, but they doesn't know what to do when no questions are asked. That's the problem. Now the system what we have in India was a system which was made by the colonial rulers to create robots to run their whole colonial system. Unfortunately, a post-colonial education system never changed it. It remains as same. This system is called mimicking by Howard Gardner, which strategically kills a student's spontaneous creativity and converts him into a mimicking machine who is ready to receive data and deliver accordingly. Unfortunately, our ancient system of education was not the same. After my research, I found that it had 4 strong components at study. The components were Brahmandam, the Shivam, Prakriti, and Nirvana. Brahmandam is the small world what one creates around them, where they can create, ideate for the things what they belongs to. Shivam is the consciousness, which makes them conscious to tell that other than them, there are things outside. And then Prakriti says that something doesn't belong to you, it belongs to nature. And at the end, we have something called Nirvana, which says that you don't belong to yourself, you also belong to people. This was a very strong ancient education system which we had. Unfortunately, we lost it. What I will propose here is something called RTCE, which I evangelize myself. It's called Right to Creative Education. This should supersede what we have RTE, because if we put RTE, RTEs will create robots, nothing more. So at the end of 10 years, we will become a country to provide robots to other developed countries. Exactly, that's what we are doing, called data entry operators. So if we have RTCE, that means education which is based on creativity. That means an individual can think, not to be thought of. What I propose under RTCE is basically 5 most important points to be implied in the school. The point says that creative education is one individual's birthright. Nobody has the right to kill the creativity of a student. Ask me, my daughter is to do nice drawings before going to schools. After going to school, she started finding out samples to see and draw. That means she can't draw without seeing. That exactly happens when you go to school. And when we go to college, we can't even draw. We just need to have compass and scale for drawing, right? So a school education should have nurtured the creativity of an individual, a kid. So it's a birthright of an individual, not education, but creative education. A school should deliver creativity-based experiential learning. It should not be book-based learning. It should be experiential learning. That means the person should experience. We learned till step standard. How many of you are using your logarithms in your daily life? How many of you are using your geometric skills, your trigonometry in your daily life? Have you ever thought of that wearing a shoe is also geometry? Have you ever thought of that? Or sitting on a chair is also geometry? Nobody told us, right? That's a problem. I'll also propose the third point, which says that teachers should become more open-minded and appreciative rather than delivering machine. A teacher should not deliver. We don't need a delivering machine. Believe me, as he was telling that today knowledge is everywhere, it's a fingertip away. My students checks all the data on the table whether I'm telling correctly or not, right? And they have Google, right, which is much better than a teacher. So a teacher should be somebody who catalyzes them, inspires them, and appreciates them. That's very important part. The R&D should be an integral part of learning. So research should start from the primary school itself, not on the secondary or higher secondary education. And in the fifth point, what I should say, that handicraft should be integral part of learning. That means a student in the primary school should learn handicraft. Handicraft is not something which you got from West. A normal pottery is also handicraft. Why? Because this will make them appreciative to the craftsman which belongs to this country, because after 10 years, craft will be the only wealth which leads to an industry. Believe me, because I'm part of this GI registration, and we have enormous resources as craft which we don't use in our schooling education system. And that is something we should inculcate among the students, and that is they should learn. So I'll just end it up. I believe I'm finishing 6 minutes. So I'm just ending it up with a small quote from Kathopanishad, which is basically the definition of Bharata. It says that Bharata is Brahma Vidyam Tasyam Ramate Iti Brahman. That means Bharata is the ultimate truth. That means somebody should find a truth. That is Bharata. And interestingly, it's the name of Agni. That means fire. Very interesting, because Agni is something which creates and also destructs. And that is where we are in Indian as a concept. And I think all the students should have the right to become the fire, to destruct and start a new beginning. And that is where I will end my talk. I think the panels will add up on the value on it. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Professor Kausal Sengupta. I think one thing is that's coming out very clearly is not only is the nature of education changing, but the nature of the teacher also is changing from someone who used to stand and teach to more of a coordinator role, assuming that information that is required to be, that bucket to be filled already exists. So you only need to be there with a matchstick to ignite whatever knowledge you need to ignite. I think that's come out very clearly. We have one more giant, Professor Arora of Supertech University. So let's listen to his take on where the private education leads to the public good.
Good afternoon, everybody. 4 persons have spoken on the same theme at the learned audience. I don't think I will take more than 5-6 minutes, because I don't believe in repeating what has been said. I'm lucky, I'm fortunate to have education from one of the finest public institutions, G.V. Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar, one of the best in agriculture university, agriculture education. I was also a teacher, administrator there. Then I became Vice Chancellor of a public university, Kumaon University, and now the private. Let me tell you that it's not a debate, as Chairman has mentioned. It's not a controversy, it's not a dispute. Private education leads to public goods. What are the obstacles? How really public institutions are respected, to be considered, to be respected, to provide public goods. What are the lacunae in the, say, public institutions? I give the example. As I mentioned, one of the finest, one of the best education institution in agriculture education. It took 3 years for me to get approval from the government to start a faculty which was later on rated as one of the top 5 of the country. 3 years from the government to get the approval, at least 50 visits to explain to APC, to planning secretary, to say chief secretary, to the minister. and then the approval. It was only that persistently that I was following up that I got the approval. Private institutions have advantage of introducing this. But we have problems. If we really want education to be a game changer, if we really want that education should lead to prosperity, economic development, social transformation, cultural transformation of the country, we have to look into beyond intellect, beyond skill development. When one of my friends mentioned that we want to be the third largest economy, to second largest, to the first, why not? What are we doing in research? What are we doing in innovation? We are just lagging behind most of the countries which are even in the category of developing like us. What to talk of the developed countries. Not only we require expansion of the higher education in the country to catch up with the GER, which is much, much less in our country, to as high as 80% plus in US. We require expansion, but expansion at the cost of quality. Do we have teachers? Do we have scientists to supplement, to complement that effort of expansion? No. Even the best institution of management and engineering, IIT, IIM, their 40% odd positions are vacant. They are unable to get it. What to talk of the private institution? We expect a quality from the private institution, whereas we expect from the directives from the UGC, AICT, and others. So this is the ratio of teacher taught. This is the ratio of the associate, assistant, and professor position. Where from these come? Are we able to produce that? One of the biggest tasks for the private institution now is to produce the teachers, to produce the scientists. Because unless we produce the scientists, who will be guiding the doctoral research? Who will be guiding the master's research? No one. But the quality of the research that we are having at master's and PhD level is deteriorating. It's not improving, it's deteriorating over last couple of decades. Because our regulatory bodies want that every teacher recruited should be PhD. And to have a PhD, you know that some of the private universities, their degrees were de-recognized because they were producing the PhDs without actual research. Now, in that case, the quality control is important. Innovations in various spheres of the education are required. The quality, when I say, quality is the recruitment of the input, that is students. Quality in processes, the procedures, curriculum development. Quality in faculty, quality in output, everything. The quality, when we say quality in governance, the governance is very, very important. Because without effective and quality governance, you can't have others, the quality one. So we require innovations. Why not we go to the centers of excellence to recruit teachers? This is the innovation. We simply advertise, call the people, or we contact the people. No. Why can't we go to IIM, IITs, others, where we have good scientists, good teachers to recruit the students? Who can be the teacher? Who can be the scientist? Why don't we reward them? Why don't we allow them to do research only if they are most competent to do research? Don't we put them, no, you will have to teach so many courses, you will have to teach, this is the credit load and like that. So in that case, if we really want, if you really want that private institutions are respected, in that case, we have to innovate. But simultaneously, the government will have to consider, are we still required to have that who is to be admitted in the private institution, who is to be recruited, how is to be recruited? If these are to be guided by the government, then how can that autonomy that is expected in the private institution will sustain? It's not. Still, if you visit the syllabi of BA, BSc, that is prescribed by UGC, and see what is the CBSC syllabi at +2 level, you find number of the topics that have been studied at the +2 or even at the 10th level, that is repeated in the BSc and BA courses. No innovation in the curriculum development. And even the private institutions, their degrees will be recognized if we follow the same syllabi. The private institutions are directed what physics topics are to be taught, how many courses are to be taught, how many credits are to be taught. We don't give flexibility. We don't give them autonomy. And unless we make the education exciting, because as one of my friends mentioned, you have to innovate in the technology. The delivery of education, that's very, very important. How do you deliver it? If an engineer is interested in the music, why can't we provide music classes in the institution? That will improve the effectiveness of his learning process. If he is interested in the creative art, why not you provide that? Provide that. Give the basket courses to the student, whether he is going to be doctor, whether he is going to be the management graduate. So we have to innovate in that sense. Innovation in curriculum development, innovation in the recruitment, innovation in the placement and counseling. Everywhere we have to require. And the sky is the limit, the expansion. You know that Japan has more than 4,000 universities for 127 million people. How many universities we can create? We can. But private universities will only survive, only sustain if certain regulatory process is diluted. The concept of not-for-profit is revisited. You may impose the tax, but allow them to plow back to innovate that way. So in that case, the education should become a game changer, and it should produce, the private institution and the public institution should produce a teacher who is respected by students, should produce a scientist which produces the relevant research in the, or innovative research in the country, produce a professional, whether the doctor or engineer, who can directly take into to treat the patient. He should be given the professional, say, vocational education, which is respected. It's not only in one sense, intellect, skill, professional, and above all, the entrepreneurship. It's not that everybody becomes a job seeker. Every institution should produce some education, some courses in entrepreneurship.
Professor Arora, please wind up.
So in that case, if we want the quality, we have to look into that, what is required, what skill set is required. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have heard four outstanding gentlemen. We have a very unusual gentleman here, Mr. Ravichandar from Yes Bank, which has a very, very active CSR program. So let's hear what Mr. Ravichandar has to say.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As has been mentioned, I think I'm the odd man out here. I'm not an educator, and I pretend to be educated. I've always maintained that I've kept learning away from education. On this subject, I just want to share a few thoughts of mine. There was a time when students used to stay in a guru's place and study. That was the Gurukula system, as it was called. Students would stay with the guru as long as they wished, or till the guru felt that they were taught enough. Learning then was linked to nature and life, and not confined to memorizing. Education system has changed very much now. Today, education is becoming a fundamental right. Let's look at the current scenario. There is a very high demand for education in India. 80% of the recognized schools at elementary stage are run or supported by the government, making them the largest provider of education in India. However, due to resource shortage and other issues, this system faces huge gaps. Also, while the government is committed to providing primary education and subsidies for higher education, given the elevated cost of higher education, we are witnessing entry of privately run educational institutions. The 20th century skills, standards, and learning requirements have virtually become synonymous with getting educated at private schools and colleges. Around 600 million of our population falls in the age group of 1 to 24 years. Allocation on education in the 11th five-year plan is 6 times that of the 10th five-year plan. Spend on education is at 3.7% of the GDP as of 2011-12. And India has the largest education system globally after China and the US, with more than 1 million schools and 31,000 higher educational institutions. All these statistics just to give you an idea as to what the current scenario is. Private involvement in education has become extremely huge. Indians spend over $50 billion annually on private education. All over the world, private schools are springing up, especially in rural and semi-urban areas. And the major private sector investments are seen in the areas of preschools, private coaching and tutoring, teacher training, the development and provision of multimedia content, educational software, development, skill enhancement, etc. However, ladies and gentlemen, there's a yawning gap. India has one of the lowest GERs, the gross enrollment ratio globally. In India, the GER, the gross enrollment ratio, is 16%, much below the world average of 27%, as well as that of the other emerging countries such as China, which has got 26%, and Brazil, which has got 36%. The government's objective is to achieve a 30% GER by 2020. What does this mean? This means it translates to 45 million students enrollment from 25 million enrollments today. GER in the urban areas is 23%, whereas in rural it is only 7.5%. In such a situation, I believe our discussions should move away from debates of private versus public provision of education. The focus should be on the design of better education systems that aim to deliver superior outcomes which will be for the public good. Both the private and the public sector have inherent strengths and weaknesses. We have to leverage the strengths of both while mitigating the weaknesses of the other. There are key issues in bridging the gap. The key issue rather than bridging the gap between education and employability. This is the key issue. We have to bridge the gap between education and employability. As we read in the papers today, it says 34% is only employable. Educational institutions, both private and public, need to constantly work with the challenge of matching education with employment. I can just cite a few points which can act as catalysts to reduce this mismatch. Links with industry. There's a need to reorient training and teaching modules as per industry requirements. Enhanced role of India Incorporated in collaborating with schools, setting up skill development centers, community collection education models, designing an appropriate India-specific skill development and enhancement framework, corporate scholarships, and taking advantage, most importantly, taking advantage of PPP frameworks. It is estimated that private equity investors have invested more than $300 million in education-related initiatives. More involvement from the private sector has to be sought. So what are we trying to say here? What are we recommending to the government perhaps and to private schools? To the government, introduce student-side financing to ensure a level playing field between public and private institutions. Create enabling legislations at the state level to encourage private players to set up universities in those states. Expediting passage of the Innovation Universities Bill to encourage private players to invest significant amounts in setting up innovation universities which are independent of geographic constraints, and allow players to set up for-profit institutions while putting in place a regulatory framework to ensure quality and transparency. And what are we telling the private schools? Please focus on high-quality curriculum at par with global institutions and developed with an emphasis on employability. Create student grants, scholarships with greater reach. Foster community development in education and setting up of private institutions. in rural areas, conduct outreach programs in collaboration with the government. In short, since I know I have just about 7 minutes and I'm pretty much inside that, 7 is not yet up. What we need is the right combination of knowledge and skills for the younger generation. They form the backbone of our economy. The government and the private players have to take on this responsibility of making available this dose in a widely available and affordable fashion. One last thought. No matter who provides it, any education provided is good, provided it is good education. We are always talking of an educational system that teaches people to make a living. We are always talking of an educational system which teaches people to make a living. Let it also teach them to make a life. That would be good. That would be public good for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you very much. You have actually obviated the need for me to do any rounding up because I think you have essentially brought out the points which come out of this afternoon. The way to look at it perhaps is to say, even though we are talking about public and private good, willy-nilly the discussion does border down on public and private education, as we saw that's happening. And at the very least, one can only say that, look, out of the last 67 years post-independence, at least for 57 years, the public good was supposed to be coming only through public education, largely whether it is school level or higher education. It's only in the last 10 years or so that the private education has come in. And we know that in the first 57 years, nothing earth-shattering happened in the quality of our education scene. So if nothing else, we can all be magnanimous and give private sector a chance. Sure, we could discuss whether private education should be for profit or not for profit, but to, get into a narrower mode that public sector is all bad. Today, for example, what is your company law bill revised one for CSR? Today, corporates are being invited to participate in CSR. Areas which were traditionally held by NGOs and government sector, today we are inviting the corporates to come in. So I would assume that India is the most populous country in the world, or about to become the most populous. Government alone is finding it very difficult to, manage all the public good that has been vested upon it as its responsibility. And I think we have to look at government and the private as left and right hand. And I think instead of bigoted that all the foreign education is bad and all the Indian education is good, I often say in a lighter vein that India's glorious past cannot be a consolation for a sorry present. So I think we need to learn, and I think all that is coming out in this afternoon's discussion. I think we will take about 10 to 12 minutes of questions, which I had promised right at the beginning. We will start at the end and come forward. Each row, we will pick one person at random. Please. Yeah, right there at the back, first row.
Good evening, sir. I'm Narayanan, School of Law, Shastra University. So my question regarding the topic is, can the government support a faculty exchange program between the universities in India? Because you were telling about the importance of a private education is of public good. So when the private universities, like big universities around India, if they send their faculties to the universities in colleges and universities in rural places in India, so they can share their knowledge with the students. You also told about the importance of social media in education. Rather than going on with social media, do you think it would be feasible for the faculties from big universities around India to teach the students in rural India? Not only in universities and colleges, but also the schools of rural schools and urban schools, which is of low standard, as the government think?
Well, personally, I don't think we need to depend on the government to be an enabler in matters like these. Nothing prevents a university from having an active exchange program either within the country or even outside the country. But talking about the inertia in our systems, I can tell you how difficult things get. I remember 20 years ago making an appeal to all the IIMs For doctoral courses, because normally in a doctoral course there will be 2 students and 1 faculty teaching. It's a very, very expensive way of teaching PhD students. I used to say that, look, we already had a very elementary kind of a virtual classroom setup available through IIT Madras intervention. I said a course can be offered by 1 IIM and all the other 3 or 4 IIMs could join in. Even that could not happen. That is the kind of inertia some of our systems have. Personally, I'm not sure whether government can be an enabler. I think we simply have to believe that we should be able to do it. And I think the ball lies squarely on our court. And nothing prevents a university having a system where, like CSR, we say, corporates adopting villages around their projects, a university can do exactly the same. So I think let us keep the ball in our court rather than putting it on to somebody else, whoever it may be.
I think it should not be a system that faculty is being forced to go to a village and teach. It should be the faculty's initiative to go and teach, because we have already seen the system in the medicine and it doesn't work. We can't force a doctor to go to a rural area and be there. It depends on the doctor who will have the social responsibility to go and do it. For example, like we do workshops in different villages. Like we did from NIFT, we went to the tsunami affected areas, we took it. So it should be more like a inertia which should be inculcated in the faculty's side rather than going to a system and putting them forcefully to do it. I think it should be on that side.
Next.
Hello, sirs. My question is kind of broad, but I would like to shorten it.
Can you put your hand up? I can't see you.
Sir, here it is.
Oh, okay.
So we have esteemed institutes like IIMs and IITs. But 2 years back, a study was conducted which was called PISA. And among the 73 countries, India was 72nd. And there we tested basic skills like reading, mathematics and science. So we are lagging behind in the basic fabric, the basic thread itself of the education. So how can we, or any institution, be it public or private, enhance the basic level of knowledge while bringing the best out of the students, both in the terms of skills and as a better citizen? Because right now that is not being done.
Anyone? Yeah, sure.
I think the problem is how we deliver the education. For example, the education what we deliver through our book system is an education which is just a knowledge gaining system, right? For example, if you see ABCD books, elephant is in the same size of an apple. So how can you understand an apple is much smaller than an elephant, right? So it depends on experiential learning. And that is where we are lacking. We are creating engineers, we are creating doctors. Even in the beginning primary stage, we are delivering education without telling them why we need it, right? That's a problem what we have. I think you will add.
I think it is less to do with the system and more to do with the institution. Every institution comes with its own character and its own ethos. If it's in the ethos of the institutional's vision that a person should be more well-rounded, I gave you the example, it turns out to be an example from NIT University. The first thing we teach in the first 1 month is get into the habit of asking questions. Ask questions on why are insects like this. Many of them haven't even seen an insect living in urban situations, and we have the benefit of nature around us. Or ask why are some leaves of one color and why are some of the other color. So unless you build inquisitiveness, you won't get creativity. So that was just an example. So if the institution decides that the basic ethos is to get back the reading skills, which by the way are becoming a forgotten skill now in the youth of today. That's another one which is important to be developed. So I would tend to feel that the institutional ethos drives the culture of what the students come out with.
I think couldn't agree more with that. In fact, I remember once asking in a school, who teaches geometry? And somebody put his hand up. I said, have you ever taken the kids outside the classroom to teach a session on geometry? Because I said you spent 4 years, according to him, on triangles. You know, we learn triangles to death when we are in school. I said, have you ever held a class outside the classroom? He said, what will I do outside the classroom? I need a board. I said, but how does a kid know what is a triangle useful for? He said, some of the road signs are triangular, sir. I said, but it could damn well be circular or square. How does it matter? You know, then I showed him through the window, look at that Airtel tower. Take your kids there and show all the shapes of the triangle. The kid will know why you use an isosceles somewhere and a right angle triangle somewhere. Then when the kid comes to the classroom and reads geometry, it will make more sense. And I think that's exactly what they're both saying, experiential. One last question. You guys choose. Get up, stand up, you'll be the first. Yeah, right. Because I'm told there's only room for one question.
Excuse me, sir. Yeah.
Not merely profit making, they're all profiteering. Of course, there is SSN or so we would like the philanthropists like Mittal or S-Bank to come out with the non-profit institutions.
I never said we are philanthropists.
We wish that there are more philanthropists. See, education is in this sector.
We are a for-profit bank.
But at least your CSR, you could do
Of course.
That's what I said. We can debate whether it should be for-profit or not for-profit.
But what we have is profiteering. See, only in medicine, see, you pay crore, you get super specialty. What is the purpose of having a doctor who paid a crore to serve a society?
You can do profiteering if there is a demand-supply gap which is missing. If the supply is greater than demand, and the case in point is this year, 7 lakh out of 17.6 lakh engineering seats have gone vacant. That tells you that if anybody was in the habit of profiteering, he would be starving now.
Sir, in health and education is not a business. So I understand your supply and thing, but it is not a business.
No debates, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your questions, sir.
Just a moment. I would just like to thank all my outstanding panelists for...
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am, but we don't have time for another question.
A concession for the lady, please. Yep.
We have the mic there, ma'am.
What I was surprised about is, many of you have spoken here, but not a mention about commercialism. I don't know why.
Sorry?
Because I'm sorry to say, many private institutions are mushrooming like anything nowadays. Like many other hospitals also, in every field it is. But is it with a real intention of dissipating the knowledge or to make money for themselves? That is why the quality goes down. And one thing, please. And one thing, somebody was mentioning about a doctor does not go to the rural area and working. I am a doctor by profession. I have worked in primary health centers. You know the plight I was working in? In a thatched shed, above my head, the snakes would be dangling. A lady who was unmarried at the time. How can you expect a doctor to work in a place where there's not even a basic amenity? Same case for a lecturer. Somebody was talking about the faculties with greater knowledge and greater eminence to come and work in a private institution. They have to be adequately compensated for that. They should have quality of life, isn't it, sir? Are they not worth it?
I think your points are very well taken. No, I think it's nobody's case that there are no ills in the private sector education, just as there are holes in the public sector education also, like no teachers in a school, but the salary gets drawn and so on and so forth. One could have a whole seminar once again on these issues. And these are the snakes dangling are the reasons we are still counted among the poorest countries in the world. If everything was right.
Provided us with fabulous information and ample food for thought. Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Sunil Galgotia, Mr. Vijay K. Thadani, Professor Kaustav Sen Gupta, Professor VPS Arora, Mr. R. Ravichandar, and of course our chairperson, Mr. V. Raghunathan. Thank you very, very much once again for being here with us. A quick group photo, if you will, so that we can remember this moment. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chawla. And